warm greetings everyone. On behalf of W4W Foundation, a think tank instituted as a citizens collective, we welcome you to another session of Wednesdays for Water. The conversation today is on mapping urgency for deploying stormwater management programs. The objective of Wednesdays for Water is to engage in conversation with water experts, grassroots practitioners, policymakers, and youth to explore the complex intertwined issues associated with water and the possible solutions they are seeking. It has expanded since then to have more activities like Friday Waters and Monday Munching with Women for Water, besides organizing water workshops, water walks and talks, seminars, special courses, and conference panels to continue the water conversation in various possible ways. At W4W, we believe that water conversations are crucial to move towards water conservation. Do visit our website, www.w4w for more details. The session today on mapping urgency for deploying stormwater management program is co-hosted by the International Association for the Study of Commons, which is abbreviated at IASC, founded by Nate, Eleanor Ostrom, and Vincent Ostrom Workshop. The IASC series is meant to connect with the water workers of Asia who are working all over the world to expand the idea of water commons and what is going on around different parts of the Asian subcontinent. My name is Mansi Bal Bhargav, and I am the moderator for the session and also from the W4W Foundation, besides holding the IASC Asia coordinator position. So when we talk about stormwater management, we know that in most of the cities, at least in India, we know that we have a combined stormwater and drainage water management. And we are always looking at what are the alternate ways and how it is specifically managed. Especially in a country like India, at this point when we are talking, we have two major cities, metropolis, who are really drowning, Bangalore and Chennai. And in those kind of situations, we need to know how the information system of hydroinformatics works around, what kind of things going on. But I'm not going to talk much about it. To do all talking about the session, we have the honor to have Dr. Faisal, Shaheen, and Fayyaz, Baqir. So before I invite both of them, I also wish to really extend my deep gratitude for both of them to agree. Even just at one call, they could agree that yes, we will do this session. So I'm really grateful on behalf of W4W. And before I invite them, let me just have a brief introduction of both, and I'm going to put the detailed introduction in the chat box. Faisal has a PhD in public policy from Toronto Metropolitan University. He has an MBA in sustainability from, I hope I pronounced the word rightly, Schulich School of Business, York University, as well as a BSc in Biology and Environmental Science from University of Toronto. Prior to joining the City of Toronto, Faisal worked as Marketing and Business Development Manager for 3 of North America's leading water and wastewater OEMs. He has also served as policy analyst and advisor with South Asia's network of civil society and multilateral institutions. Currently, he serves as manager of enterprise solution management, leading a team of a huge members responsible for the requirements, deployment, and support of enterprise level applications for the City of Toronto Water Division. And he will also actually showcase how from Toronto, we can also learn from Canada's water management to South Asia's water management, and we'll throw some light on Pakistan and Bangladesh, India, if possible, which I have requested him, because he's regularly lecturing and conducting courses and speeches and publishes research and public policy. So this is in brief about their work, and that they have really decades of work experience. So may I now invite Faisal to take on the presentation, and the mode of presentation is in today's session is like he's going to make the presentation, and Fayyaz is going to discuss with him as and when required. So thank you so much, both of you, and over to you, Faisal. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mansi. Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum, everyone. It's very exciting to be here at the Wednesday for Water session, and welcome to all of you, and greetings from Toronto, Canada. Today's presentation is going to be specific to how do we map urgency? How do we, in such a complex time when we're dealing with severe wet weather events and climate change and stormwater, how do we get policymakers to think urgently about deploying stormwater management programs? It has to do with not just the government, but also with community mobilization. And I thank my colleague Fayyaz for being here. He will be shedding some thoughts and reflections on the social capital aspect of this as we move through the presentation. So I will talk about, I'll talk briefly about the policy pressure of stormwater management, and not just how it affects Toronto, but also across the municipal north. There's a tremendous amount of damage that's incurred by severe wet weather events. At the extreme, you have what's happening in Florida right now with Hurricane Milton, just like Hurricane Katrina, expected to cause billions of dollars of damage. On the milder side, with wet weather flows, with storms and rainfall, we have a lot of pressure from severe wet weather events as a result of climate change, and they cause damage in the billions of dollars. So while we may not see, as compared to Pakistan and India, houses falling over and cattle and soil being eroded, there's a substantial amount of damage that is incurred in the West, in the global North. And this is something that's caused policymakers and communities alike to think about this. So we'll talk about the background of that very briefly and some of the parallels with what we can learn in urban South Asia. And then what I'd also want to do is emphasize the role of community and social capital in actually contributing to green infrastructure and some risk mitigation. I'll take a break at the halfway point of the presentation, and I'll invite my colleague Fayyaz to speak a little bit about social mobilization. And then for the last half of the talk, the discussion, I'll introduce a technology piece to this, how you can link maps and mobile solutions to actually monitor stormwater management. And this is something that even can happen at the community level. And it's just an example of a tool that is being used in the north, as well as in some parts of the south. So hopefully we'll come away from with an appreciation of the policy parallels between global north and global south, and then some of the tools we can use to at least start at a local level on mapping stormwater management programs. So just in terms of in the global north, what we see is many North American cities, Toronto included, responding to severe wet weather events through corporate resiliency planning. Now, the problem in the north is that when you're dealing with stormwater, there's no one division or department that deals with this at the city level. You have the water department that takes care of water supply, wastewater, stormwater. You have transportation departments that deal with roads, municipal planning, which will deal with building and infrastructure, parks, forestry, recreation, that will deal with the actual green spaces. All of them have to actually work together. And we see this in India and Pakistan. It's very difficult to get policy actors and stakeholders on the same page. The process mapping exercise actually brings people's roles and responsibilities into a use case, end to end, where we can actually see how people should be involved and what responsibility they have to take. And we'll talk about that at the end of at the second half of the lecture. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of pressure in terms of damage from severe wet weather events. You have a lot more regulations now that deal with stormwater management flows. We also know that many people will be living in cities, very similar to what we see in India and Pakistan, much more concentration. And how do we keep these people safe? We also have more vertical infrastructure, engineered infrastructure, so more concrete, more buildings. And what that does is it takes the water flow away from being absorbed naturally in the soil, and it creates overland flow, which hits your drainage systems, which is, of course, very dangerous because that leads to flooding and localized flooding events. A problem we have in Canada, which you don't probably have as much in India, is the swings in daily temperatures. So in the winter, you'll have a lot of freezing. In the summer and spring, you'll have thaw. In the old days, you would have, one season. It would get cold, it would be winter, everything would freeze. And then in spring, everything would thaw and melt. And then you would have this expansion and contraction that happened on a fairly predictable basis. Now, with severe climate change and severe wet weather, these expansion and contraction cycles are much more frequent. And what happens is the underground infrastructure starts to break. So this is a problem. The other point that I'd like everyone to pay attention to is what we see in terms of damage, typically from wet weather flow, is above the ground. But what happens below ground with pipes, with underground infrastructure, that also experiences a tremendous amount of damage. If you have pipe that's buried underground and water and storm water is leaking and passing at the subsurface layer and washing soil away, all of that soil underneath the pipe, once it gives way, will cause the pipe to snap. So you need to manage your stormwater flows as best as you can, not just to protect the buildings and the infrastructure above ground, but also that which is below ground as well. And as I mentioned, this causes a lot of damage. Very briefly, what many cities across the global north are doing, Toronto included, is developing master plans to deal with stormwater. And they're doing this at the city level, across the entire city, but also at the neighborhood level. This is very important for us to appreciate in India and Pakistan. We don't simply, while we do see planning taking place at the city level, the amount of money that's required to deal with flood mitigation is in the billions of dollars. Cities in the north don't have that money, neither do us in the south. But what we can do is look at solutions that can at least target flooding in local neighborhood levels. And that's where communities are being a lot more engaged. So this is another parallel. We see policy capacities being overwhelmed, quite frankly, in the global north, and much more emphasis now being placed at the local level. We've seen across the north and in Toronto a lot of effort put into planning. These, don't worry about the acronyms. WWFMP basically stands for a wet weather flow master plan. So most cities will have a plan that deals with wet weather flows and what to do. But the problem is when you're dealing with engineered infrastructure, green infrastructure, who owns what? What areas of the right of way, buildings, property are owned? And then how do we actually manage that in terms of stormwater? It gets very, very complicated. So we have many tools that are out there, which cities use, and many of them deal with large sort of state government level, provincial government level initiatives, where cities will get money on scenario planning, cleaning up rivers, climate resiliency planning, low impact development. Bullets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 really have to do with gray infrastructure and engineered infrastructure. It gets very complicated and very expensive. The sixth bullet, green infrastructure, is increasingly popular because, and it's relevant to us in the global south, in India and Pakistan, because it's using the natural infrastructure, trees, plants, swales, eco corridors, basically to soak water and slow water down before it hits the stormwater management system. So very relevant to us in the global south. Now, if the northern people have abandoned technology and engineered solutions to solve stormwater, it gives us a sign that we should probably try looking at the same thing in the global south. So before I pause for Fayyaz Bhai's comments on social capital, I just want to talk a little bit about green infrastructure and what it means. Green infrastructure refers to anything natural which soaks water. So you can have street trees in planters. In some smaller towns, you can have eco passages which facilitate the travel of wildlife between green spaces. One very popular feature is permeable pavement. This is where you actually have gaps, spaces between the brickwork and the stone, which forms your pavement, and water actually percolates and soaks and is stored in the pavement. And then you also have ponds and rain gardens and more complicated underground stormwater systems. So just to visually illustrate how this looks. Now, of course, this is a modern city and it looks very sort of Western, but if you can just focus on the going to zoom in a little bit. If you can just focus a little bit on the actual green infrastructure, you'll get a sense of what's there. So here we can see along the side of the road a bioswale, right? And we can see a bump out of a rain garden, as well as a tree planter. These are very simple systems that you can put in place, which will take a lot of the rainfall from the streets, from the roads, and retain them within green features along the side. Now, you may say, Yar Faisal bhai, what is the point of this? How are a few planters and a few trees and rain gardens going to solve your major flooding problems? That may be, for a major flood, of course, a few green features is not going to necessarily make much difference. But if you add at the neighborhood level, like permeable pavement and other more complicated subsurface systems, you can lead to a lot more in the way of local relief of stormwater flows, slowing the water down and reducing the impact. So this is something that we see in the north actually coming to play. Now, before I turn to Fayyaz bhai, I mean, the one thing we're finding here is that what we're finding is that it takes a lot more social capital, labor, to actually manage the stormwater facilities, and that's something in India and Pakistan that we have a lot of. We don't you don't require a lot in the way of equipment and resources to manage green infrastructure. What you need is people to go in, to prune the trees, dredge some of the ponds and the drainage canals, and of course maintain and water and cultivate the spaces and make sure that there is enough seepage and infiltration taking place. This is something that general laborers, people within the poor, can be mobilized to do. You don't require expensive, high capital intensive engineers to be engaged in. We have in the north many students actually who are hired on a summer basis to actually do this work. So there's a lot of opportunity to link this together. Before I turn to Fayyaz, what I'll do is, have we lost the presentation, Mansi?
Yes, the presentation is not on the screen, okay? So
Let me try, let me do that again. I don't know what happened. Can you see it now?
yes, it is visible.
Oh,
yeah.
There we go. So as I mentioned, you can look at this on your own time, but you can see for all of these different rain gardens, the bump outs, the street trees, it's labor that is required to really maintain green infrastructure rather than heavy equipment, machines, backhoes, bulldozers, concrete mixers that are required for gray infrastructure. So more cities in the global north are moving towards green. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard from Mansi and other of speakers the benefits of having green infrastructure and more trees because it captures carbon dioxide, it adds shade, it can reduce the heat island effect, and there are much more benefits for cities of having green infrastructure. Again, just before I get to Fayyaz bhai, just to illustrate how relevant this is to us in the global south. In the cities of the north, no matter what asset you take, whether it's permeable pavement, above ground stormwater projects, street trees, they are divided across many different stakeholders. In this case, I'm just pointing to transportation, water, and forestry as the owner, but then also the maintainer. There are many different divisions that have to come together and figure out how to maintain this. In the global south, if we're to look at the inputs into maintaining this infrastructure, a lot of it is labor and materials, a little bit of concrete. Maybe for some of the underground stormwater systems, you have some engineering and piping that's involved, but largely it's labor with gravel and soil and dirt. These are things in civil society that we can be more involved and engaged with as a means of maintaining stormwater infrastructure. So what I'm going to do is pause there, and I'll ask Fayyaz bhai to maybe make some comments basically on some of the models of mobilizing social capital in cities in Karachi and Pakistan and various parts of South Asia, and how that might be of benefit to green infrastructure. Fayyaz bhai, do you want to
Yeah.
unmute yourself, maybe make a few
Yeah.
comments?
Thank you so much.
So,
Yeah,
Faisal, please give me a moment. Sorry, Faisal, I will have to introduce him first. And thanks,
Oh,
Faisal. Just give me a moment. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
yes.
Thanks. It's really honor to have Fayyaz Baqir ji on our platform. He teaches and writes on development practice. He has taught at the School of International Development and Global Studies, University of Ottawa, and served as O'Brien Fellow at McGill University. His professional and academic interests include participatory development, human rights, aid effectiveness, poverty alleviation, and social accountability. He co-designed and taught cross-border video conference-based courses on themes relating to justice and peace, social change, and politics of human development in Pakistan for Georgetown University, Harvard University, Wellesley College, and Fatima Jinnah University. Earlier, he has also served as senior advisor on civil society for the United Nations in Pakistan. He received Top Contributor Award from the UNDP's Global Poverty Reduction Network in 2007 and 8. His book, Social Transformation in Pakistan, The Art and Science of Linking with the Other, received the Best Book Award for 2022 from the Council of Social Sciences Pakistan. Thank you so much, Fayyaz bhai. And I think I did a little bit of error in the beginning of introducing you. So please accept my apology. And over to you, Fayyaz bhai, to continue the
No
conversation.
problem.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for this generous introduction. If we look at the water management problem in the global south, especially South Asia, we see there are three key players: people or communities, professionals with technical knowledge, with policy advice, and politicians or resource providers, whether it is government agencies or donors or philanthropists or whosoever. The problem arises that this relationship traditionally has been a very hierarchical relationship. Politicians directly decide what to do. Technical experts and professionals, they come up with the feasibility of how to do it. And then they tell the people to go and do it, and it doesn't happen. So this failure becomes an important issue, how to deal with this failure. One solution we have found to deal with this failure is that all these actors, they have started othering the other actors. It has led to very low level of trust between people, professionals, and politicians. So the problem is not the capacity or intent or integrity of all these actors. The problem is low level of trust. And that is caused because we have a hierarchical relationship, we don't have a horizontal relationship. So first and foremost is to understand what should be the role. Actually, people, we need to begin by talking with the people. And the method which Akhtar Hamid Khan and my mentor used was both in urban and rural areas was to have a diagnostic dialogue. Talk to people. If they think that what problem we have in mind, they consider it as their problem also. And what they think is its solution. And are they willing to contribute to their solution? If they're not willing to contribute to their solution, and they say that this is their problem, there is something wrong over there. So they are telling us it is a problem to please us. If it is really their problem, they should be able to participate in that. For example, water, when Akhtar Mir Khan started work in Orangi, he realized that 70% of, that people falling ill and expenses incurred on their illness was the major cause of them falling below the poverty line. And the major reason was a lack of clean water, because contaminated water is source of almost 70% of diseases in the low income classes. So he asked them, do you want to have a sanitation system which prevents contamination of water table? They said yes. He said, are you willing to pay for the work at lane level? And it took them 6 months before they said yes. He said, if you are not willing to pay, I will not do it for you. I have not brought the money back. So, consulting with them and validating your ideas by asking for reciprocity. That is one important thing, diagnostic dialogue. Second comes the professional. He was a professional, an administrator, but he brought a technical professional, Arif Hassan, with him. They have to come with a technical solution, but technical solution also has to be developed in consultation with the people. Akhtar Hamid Khan used to say that people have an idea of the problem, they have some idea of the solution, only their solution needs to be upgraded. So the most important thing is, but you have to make it affordable to them. If technical solution doesn't make the solution affordable to them, they will never cooperate. So that is the challenge with technical experts, to make it affordable and to base it, because people bring so much wisdom, experience, learning, and we need to harvest that. And based on that, we develop technical solution. So when Akhtar Hamid Khan started working on Orangi, he discovered, and he's used it all his programs. He said there are two components of water management. One he called internal development, which is what happens at household level and lane level and neighborhood level. Other he called was external development, where he deals with outside the neighborhood. So Orangi was a settlement of 1 million, and he said that having flush toilet at home, laying sewage line in your lane, and sink, creating manholes, that is the responsibility of the community. And this he called primary component or internal component. External component is disposal of this water, liquid waste. That is the government's responsibility through trunk line. So if we divide the responsibilities, technical, social, and financial, it reduces the cost both for the community and the government. It makes things which seem unachievable achievable. So that is very important, to stop othering and to build belonging. It has to be knowledge based, consultation based. And for that, Parveen Rahman used to say that all of us, we have to become ninja turtles of mapping. So we need to engage communities in mapping. We need to establish a dialogue with them and find technical solution in collaboration with them. And that way we make best use of the resources which are available. And then we take it to politicians and tell them that this is the best solution and we need your support in terms of budget allocation, in terms of policy changes. So this is what I think is, if we keep it in mind, we can make very meaningful changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fayyaz bhai. So just to emphasize, with water and wastewater services, it of course becomes more focused on the supply of water for consumption, and then of course the disposal of wastewater. What Fayyaz bhai is talking about with the diagnostic dialogue and what has worked is very relevant here, given, sorry, that's a little too small, given the split between city and civil society, so the state as well as the communities, in managing and maintaining this infrastructure. It's very easy if communities, in the absence of state government planning, for communities just to set up in their neighborhoods, looking where standing water is, looking at where the risk of infrastructure damage is, and then setting up small projects, bump out gardens, rain gardens, trees, which they can easily manage, even planters on rooftops to harvest rainwater. This is something being pioneered, of course, in India and different cities, gathering rainwater and looking at that as a resource rather than as just something that has to be diverted to a receiving body. This is something that can be piloted at the local level, and then bringing city planners and other stakeholders in for replication across different communities, settings, and neighborhoods. Mansi, I know we wanted to make this a little interactive. Do you have
Yes.
any questions from the chat box or
No.
any?
Could you please continue if you like to? Otherwise, I will have some questions afterwards after your presentation. Okay? Yeah.
Wonderful, Nancy. Okay, so just getting back to then some of the, just to finish off some of the aspects of the maturity model and green infrastructure. We know that the city and the government has to be involved in leading it. So what many cities around North America have done is set up a maturity model around green infrastructure. How do you know how your city ranks in terms of its ability to manage stormwater? If you're just identifying the risks and the drivers, or if you have a program in place, those are low levels of maturity. If you've actually figured out a whole inventory of your assets and what program services you offer, that's the mid level. And if you actually have money and you're doing monitoring and evaluation, that's at a much more mature level. Most cities, to be honest, everyone, are only at the program structure level. There's a very low level of maturity around green infrastructure in developed countries, in urban cities, and it shows that there's a lot more work to be done. As Fayyaz has outlined rightly, mobilization of communities is something that we can actually tap into in the global south, which can actually help us manage our stormwater, at least at a local level first, and then regional and citywide going forward. So I'm going to skip over this section. Fayyaz has spoken to a little bit of this, engaging the community, looking at neighborhoods and mobilizing them to understand what their risks of flooding, risks of stormwater management, and potential benefits of rainwater harvesting are, is really critical. Once you have that done, and this builds on some of the work that Akhtar Hamid Khan Sahab did and Marhuma Parveen Rahman Sahiba in terms of mapping, going down to the community level and understanding what is it that they have in terms of social infrastructure, and how can that be utilized to maintain and manage green infrastructure. So we have here an example, and I'm going to talk about the mapping first, as well as the technology. We have here a stormwater pond. A stormwater pond is like any green space. It's basically in a particular area of the city, of a catchment basin, where there's a little bit of low-lying depression and water collects. Very simple. And ponds are really used as green features, spaces where wildlife and birds can drink, and areas where during severe wet weather events, you can have the collection of water so that it slows down and reduces the risk of erosion through downstream surges of stormwater into the river system. So what we'll talk about now is how we use mapping technology, GIS technology at the city to manage these stormwater ponds. Essentially, they fill up with silt every 5 or 6 years. They have to be drained, they have to be dredged so that they're running optimally. But I want everybody to sort of consider this. How you maintain a stormwater pond is very similar to how you maintain a park, how you maintain an eco passage, how you maintain a bump out or a rain garden or a bioswale or a tree planter. The issue is really communicating and coordinating that across the community and the city. And as Fayyaz mentioned, when you have the dialogue starting with the community, then it's a matter of understanding role and responsibility, as well as capturing that information that is being disseminated to manage the infrastructure. Fayyaz talked about water and wastewater infrastructure. Here we're talking about stormwater infrastructure. You can use technology to maintain them in very similar ways. So we basically have an operations and maintenance practice in play to manage these ponds. Just going to move through this very quickly. Essentially, for those of you who are interested in technology, we use mobile tools, so information entered into your cell phone, and that basically connects with a computerized maintenance management system on the city side to basically establish how well these stormwater assets are running. So imagine if a pond or if a nala or if a drain is blocked, a citizen should be able to go in and their mobile phone, fill in a complaint and say, look, this is damaging the stormwater infrastructure, it needs to be fixed. And either members of the city or the community come and help to clean it up and maintain it. That's really the practice in a nutshell. This is just a cycle that shows how often it's cleaned, the assessment, cleaning, and inspection cycle. For every stormwater pond, it's cleaned every 5 years. But now imagine if you multiply that by as many tree planters that you have, as many rain gardens as you have, as many bioswales and permeable pavement. All of that infrastructure taken together, all of those assets taken together require now dedicated resources from the city and even the community to maintain them. But it's linking all of this infrastructure together. When Fayyaz was talking about the box drains and the water supply, that's all connected through one system that provides the water and one system that discharges the wastewater. With stormwater infrastructure, it's fragmented, it's separated, because in every watershed, in every catchment basin, water is being absorbed by all of these green infrastructure assets to divert stormwater from the stormwater flows and into the drainage system. So how do you connect all of this together? This is just one example. So we have a process map here, which indicates that the pond needs to be cleaned. And then further down the process map, you can see with all of these orange boxes at the bottom, there's siltation, there's a signage that needs to be repaired, maybe there's green spaces which need to be resodded over. Essentially, what you do through this map is develop a set of role and responsibility for the community actor and the city to maintain the piece of green infrastructure. And it may be simple, pruning a tree, watering or maintaining a rain garden. And who owns it? Is it the community or the neighborhood group, or is it the city that owns it? All of this has to be planned out, mapped out on a large scale to connect all of these green infrastructure assets. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but for those of you who are interested, it's basically information entered here through an address in the main computerized maintenance management system. This is a map now that shows up on a mobile device, which shows where this particular stormwater pond is, right? And then you can see there off to the right in the menu column, all the attributes of the asset, when the last time it was cleaned, how big it is, the material. You can get very sophisticated and detailed in terms of the information you're gathering. Maybe some plants work better than others in Chennai or in Bangalore, or require more or less maintenance. This is where it gets very exciting. You can get other people, arborists, horticulturalists together from different disciplines to maintain infrastructure, all because you are capturing the information here. Then the information on inspection is entered into the mobile tool. Are there any blockages? Are there any waste issues? Is there erosion? What's the dry pond level? All of the attributes of the green infrastructure can be captured here. And then finally, when all of that's entered from the mobile device, it goes back to the computerized maintenance management system on the city side, and then that serves as the repository of information. So we're using mapping technology at the community level, at the citizen level, to capture and document information, which eventually is stored then on the city side. So in a way, the technology can be used to make this information gathering much more transparent. So just to finish off, essentially we know that the city has to own the mapping of processes, attributes, and data fields. Just like the component sharing model that Fayyaz spoke about, there is a role for the city to manage the large infrastructure, and of course, for the communities where possible to mitigate risks by assisting in the management of the local community infrastructure. If we have information gathered through these mobile tools and it's validated in the computerized maintenance system, we can update and develop meaningful maps of groups of green infrastructure data and assets, and create an inventory that we can replicate across different communities with different groups. And just to reiterate what we've learned in the West, and it's very similar to what our guru, our Ustad Akhtar Hamid Khan Sahab and Parveen Sahiba, and Fayyaz Bhai is my teacher as well. We used to think in the 90s that we had to bring in technology first, then develop a process, and then engage the people at the end. And we realized very quickly that it doesn't work. Well, it took 10, 15 years to actually for them to realize it. That doesn't work. You have to engage the people first, develop processes, and then bring in technology. Community-based organizations can play a huge role in this with green infrastructure because it's specific to beautifying and providing benefits to the local community. The large planners at the city level may not be as concerned, but if communities can be engaged and mobilized to value this green infrastructure, it can lead to multiple benefits beyond wet weather flow management and stormwater management. And Mansi, that's all I have. Maybe we can take a few minutes for questions.
Yeah.
I
Thank you
think
so much. Yeah. Please go ahead,
Yeah.
Fayyaz bhai. I was going to
Yeah,
invite
I
you to
just
have the
want
last
to
words. Go ahead.
mention 2 points.
Yeah.
Because one distinction between the global north and global south is that global north societies are high trust societies. And in global south, we suffer from low level of trust between the key players, people, professionals, and politicians. And Akhtar Hamid Khan provided 2 very important insights. And because when we go there as technical professionals, thinking that we have all the solutions and we have all the right solutions in hand, and why these people don't understand. And when it comes to civil society and politicians think that we are the true representatives of people we have been elected. Who the hell are these civil society people who claim to be engaged with the people? So then we go and talk to the people. And there the issue of trust comes up. Dr. Hamid Khan gave 2 very important insights. First, he said was that when you go to the people and you talk to them and you offer a solution and they don't agree with you, it doesn't mean rejection. It means anarchy. It
Yes.
means there are more than one opinions. They don't trust you. They have not tested your capabilities. They don't have confidence in that. So he said, in that case, don't take it as rejection, but try to identify the early adopters, the progressive people who share their vision, your vision, who understand what you are saying. Start with them instead of trying to convert others. You start working with the people who agree with you and test out the approach and show it to them. And then there'll be snowball effect. Once they succeed, people who are left behind, they will not want to be left behind. They feel more secure, they're more confident, they start trusting you. That is one thing. Second and most important thing was that when you consult with the people, he said people will come up. You ask them for the solution. Okay, this is the problem. What is your solution? He said they will come up with 2 types of solutions. One are their dreams, and others what is possible within the means. So you need to distinguish. For example, he was working with the farmers in peri-urban areas of Karachi, and they had the problem of access to water, you know, for their growing their crop. And he asked them, what is the solution? They said we should dig a canal, bring a canal over here. which will cost, tens of millions of rupees. So he said this was their dream, so he didn't reject it. But he said if you want to have fruit crop instead of regular crops, wheat crop and others, you will need less water. And if you have to water the roots of the trees, you just need a donkey cart with a drum on it, which brings water, and ask a man to come and water the plant weekly. It will cost you a few $100s every month instead of 2 crore rupees. So this is also job of the expert to know the difference between their dreams and what is possible within their means, and then have a dialogue with them that look, if we follow this path, this can succeed, within your means. And this is what he did. And one of the farmers, his wife said to him when he visited that area after a few months, he said, you advice to him has worked like a hero, and he's addicted now. He is always watching his farm because now he see that things can happen. So these two things are important. These two insights for the professionals when they're having dialogue with the community. Otherwise, it will break down and it will not raise the level of trust. That is what I wanted to add.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Thank you so much, Fayyaz bhai, and thanks, Faisal, for the wonderful presentation. Honestly speaking, I felt like, 30 years ago when I did my first master's and I was working on little ponds in my city in Ahmedabad. I was talking about them as community open spaces. Least did I realize that they have such vast opportunity to be dealt in terms of all kinds of, social as well as ecological needs of the community. Uh, in that time, it was not even realized that that is possible also. But then later when I went, I'm just trying to reflect upon because how I really felt this presentation today that it is possible. And when I was doing my PhD and I was working on Elena Rostom's work on self-organization, where we talk about being more hopeful. And when I see your presentation and how technology can be wonderfully weaved into the social capital of it, and that it is possible. And I still remember a line from Elena Rostom that the fact that we think that we are helpless as a community is a wrong notion, both by the community itself as well as by the experts who go to the community to offer solutions. I think wonderfully presented by both of you and at a pace where every community member can even understand what is going on and what can be done. Some of the picks from the session, because it's important for me to also ensure that I learned it in right way from both of you. But I think I'm going to start from in the reverse order and also relate it with the two of my own experience. As I mentioned, self-organization by Elena Rostom, but another work which is very much referred as the Noto's Satoyama and Satomi work in Japan in terms of water management, both on land and water. And I think when we look at this community-led management, and when I was looking at the mapping and all with what you were talking about, Faisal, it also reminded me of the way the whole ontology engineering has emerged, and it is extensively used in some parts of South Asia for that matter. But what really hit my nerves when Fayyaz bhai was talking about the whole idea that the community engagement is also dependent on the trust factor between the people. And you so beautifully mentioned that we really have some kind of hesitation to even talk, people talking to people, unwilling to talk about it. And the framework which you really introduced about the diagnostic dialogue. And yes, I would really like to have the Orangi project presentation on our platform. I hope to get in touch with the concerned people with your help and all, because this is the way we have really gone further in running the Wednesdays for Water session. And an important part which I was trying to mention from your talk, Fayyaz bhai, was that we have to really have those ninja turtles. Faisal also talked about it, and especially I think if we all think about community, our own neighborhood as a beautiful space and what little we can offer, we also have to embrace technology in some way or the other to make it everybody's work. But this whole idea, which was very much cleared by you, Faisal, towards the end, it's not the way that technology goes in, which is experts go there and then they have the process and then get the people in, but it has to be completely other way around. Get the people engaged and then develop the process with them, which is participatory, and then bring the technology, which was beautifully articulated also by you, Faz, by saying that people have solutions, people know the problems, and people also have some solutions. It's just that we need to really put it together or upgrade it, as Faisal mentioned it, through technology. I think the beautiful way of mapping it and making it everybody's business through mobile phones is one of the ways which we can take up. And then youth, as you were mentioning in case of Canada, that youth are engaged, and we have a lot of youth organizations who can be really engaged in these kind of small things. Now, my questions to both of you will start from here as I summarize the presentation, what you discussed today. When we talk about these things, I mean, someone has to take the lead, as I was also learning that what goes beyond is who is going to take the first step. That I think is a major step which we have to talk about. And I think I will leave this question as also my only question to both of you. How is that going to happen? Who leads first at a community level? And what are the examples and experiences from there? I have tried many attempts in my own neighborhood, failed attempts, but I still keep doing some new ideas and new things. And then I fail again and I try again. So I just want to learn, how have you learned about different case studies and who took the first lead and how did they organize people and so on. So I will take both of you for this question. Yeah.
Thank you, Mansi. Fayyaz bhai, I'll just add a few comments on this. For my dissertation, while we're reflecting, Mansi, on our previous study, we found a lot of the civil society organizations have mapping. And Fayyaz bhai's comment on what Orangi Pilot Project has done and through mapping is evidence of this. And we see this in Sri Lanka, in India, and Bangladesh. So many NGOs doing mapping at the community as well as the city level. So in my view, I think in urban South Asia, it's the civil society organizations that need to lead by example at the local level. How you actually get people mobilized, I think we have to take example from the north on this, and even from the south, where you partner with local businesses, local entrepreneurs that have a social conscience, that are civic minded, and show them what is possible. I think many businesses are willing to put the money into a rain garden or a bioswale if they know that the community is going to maintain it in the future and they can get some benefit of branding and community. And you just show what is possible, like Fayyaz bhai was saying. And then from there, things take off. I apologize, Mansi. I have a meeting at 8:30.
Yes, I'm aware of it. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Fayyaz bhai. Your last words on the question.
Thank you. Yeah, I think traditionally this task was considered the responsibility of the development administration. When we go to the civil society, then alternative to development administration is a support organization. Like Orangi Pilot Project was a support organization. And what are the function of support organization? To provide technical guidance, social guidance, and credit. These three tasks. So for providing technical guidance means, Akhtar Hamid Khan mentioned that he said when you work with the community, there are 4 barriers. So the purpose of support organization is to help communities cross those 4 barriers. First, he said, was there is a psychological barrier that people think it is government responsibility, is not my responsibility.
Yes.
So you talk to them and tell them whatever happens to your life, at least in your house, your lane, and your neighborhood is your responsibility. Unless you take interest in changing, it will not change. Second, he said that there is a social barrier. People don't know how to cooperate with one another. They don't come together.
Yes.
So you have to create community organizations. And for example, one issue is, we can have a separate session on this also. that when you create a community organization, you want to be very democratic and you hold elections. He said the moment you hold elections, you create factions. You lay the foundation for permanent faction who keep fighting. So instead of holding elections, you ask them to elect their leaders by consensus, and those people whom they can go and grab by the collar if something wrong happens. So that is social guidance, but it has to be taught, and you have to be very patient,
Yes.
working with the people. Third, he said, was technological barrier. If you offer technological solution which are not affordable, it will not work.
It will
So
not
you have
work.
to come up with low cost technical solutions. And fourth, he said, was financial barrier that can be solved through credit. If people are receiving benefits in the long run which are more than they pay for, then they will be even willing to take the credit and pay back the credit. So that should be the job of the support organization, to provide technical guidance, social guidance, and credit. So if we can take those responsibilities and work that way, we can work very effectively with the local communities.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah, Fayyaz, I still, I would like to have the, question further and continue with it, because this is such a wonderful points which you raised. And this is like a, typical classroom ideal, or I will even go to the extent of saying utopian idea of working together. But there are examples where people have really exercised it and it has worked. There are challenges. All collective actions have challenges. It's not that it is foolproof. And there are always, free riders. There are negative externalities around it. But having said that, I feel, because you are also a peace ecologist, I'm really tempted to ask you this question. This is also a way to really strengthen the social fabric, as we are already talking about strengthening the ecological, system of the community. I mean, with your vast experience in this field of community engagement and collective action, I'm adding that word from Alinor Ostrom. I mean, there are some informal rules and some formal rules, which you also mentioned in different vocabulary. Somewhere, the whole layering of these rules and understanding between the local authority, the in-between community organization, and the community at an individual level. I feel the technology does play an important role, but also there are important people in this whole system who are, maybe altruistic in doing these things. I mean, when I look at Orangi project, how it was conceptualized and all, and even Auroville in India, there is a project here, a small town. So we also need these kind of people who can dedicate themselves to the cause, and they can go beyond what do they earn out of it. What is your take and your experience about meeting some of these kind of people who have really gone beyond their professional capacity and taken interest?
Yeah, I will do one thing. Later on, I will send you also one of my comic books, which I have produced specially on this community engagement. It
Wow.
is
In fact,
70 pages.
I
Yeah.
wish to also invite you for another session, because to talk about water and peace, I will be very honest on that. So
Yeah.
please be
So you can
prepared.
share that comic
Yes.
book free of cost with all your participants. But there's one key principle,
Yes.
in many different situations, like social organizer or community organizer is the linchpin of the community
Mhm.
work.
Yes.
But what characteristic that person should have to bring the people together, to have a successful dialogue?
Mm.
And there are two principles. One is, Akhtar Hamid
Mm.
Khan said, कि समाजी काम में मूंछें नीची रखनी पड़ती हैं।
बिल्कुल।
अगर आप मूंछें नीची नहीं कर सकते ना, तो फिर आप समाजी काम नहीं कर सकते।
नहीं कर सकते, बिल्कुल
और
बिल्कुल
मेरे
सही
दो
कहा
हफीज
आपने।
आराइन, हाँ, जो मेरे दोस्त हफीज आराइन, उनका शागिर्द था, वो कहते थे, मैंने उनसे पूछा, हफीज भाई क्या है इसका राज? वो कहते थे, तुम जीते हम हारे। तो दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। Humility is the most important element in
जी,
social work.
जी,
And humility also requires patience because he said,
yes,
Dr. Hamid Khan, that community work is not an engineer's work when you put all
no,
the bricks together and raise it to certain level within a given time framework. It is like a botanist work. Plant is growing, you never know how much it has grown. You just let it
yeah,
grow and wait.
mm, mm,
So that was one thing.
mm,
The other principle was that when you go and try to create a community organization and people do create a community organization and then they again start fighting, his cardinal principle was that let people resolve their disputes themselves.
yes,
Don't jump in. Tell them that once you solve this, then come back to us. If you want us to work with you, then you have to resolve these disputes.
mm,
And in dealing with the government, he said that support organization's job should be of a solicitor. He said you're
yes,
not a judge and you're not a plaintiff. Government is a judge, you're a solicitor on behalf of the people. So you make their case. And the
mm,
best way of making that case is mapping.
yes.
You know?
So
So
well
it can
put.
be,
It's so very
yeah.
well articulated by you. A true teacher, I will be very honest. I really feel like continuously talking to you on this matter because having worked
We
on
can
a,
have a
Ostram's
separate
work.
session just on community
Absolutely.
organization where I
Absolutely.
will share
I'm very
Akhtar
much
Hamid
up for
Khan's.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
okay, go
I'm
ahead.
very much up for it. Thank you so much, Fayyaz bhai. If you have any last words, because I know we are deviating from stormwater to community management, but this is so
Yeah,
wonderful talking to you. So, what
this
I'm going to
applies to
do,
any problem that we
any
are talking
problem,
about. Yeah, yeah,
all commons
yeah,
for that
exactly,
matter. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So
And
let me go ahead,
yeah,
please. Yeah.
in the end, because my engagement with this started in 1992, when in
Mm-hmm.
World Summit for Social Development, UN came up with Local Agenda 21,
Hmm.
and where they said that think globally and act locally,
Act locally. Yes.
right? Then they created MDGs and SDGs. You know, we are
Yes.
nowhere. But I
Yes.
met the author of the
Hmm.
MDGs, one of the
Hmm.
principal authors, who was my boss in Pakistan.
Hmm.
And he said these goals are global goals.
Hmm.
They were never created as local goals.
Yes.
So
They
the
were
task
translated
of the
also.
yeah, he
Yes.
said no, the task of the professionals or governments is to indigenize these goals.
Yes. How
So
beautifully put.
so your job as a professional is to find ways to indigenize whatever you are saying.
Yes.
And that happens to only on diagnostic dialogue,
Absolutely. I
both
think
in
we need
urban
more
and rural setting.
discussion.
Yeah,
We will need more discussion on diagnostic dialogue because even during my PhD, when I was doing Alan Ostrom's work, there was a heavy discussion on developing this ontology or the vocabulary of the resource and taking a diagnostic approach instead of, an engineered or even social approach only. Either
yeah,
approach will not work. You have to dig deeper, and you don't know how long you have to dig. So I
exactly.
think and you really put it very nicely when you talked about looking at community organizations or community work growing like a plant. You don't know how much it has grown or where it
Yeah,
will go and all. I think this requires definitely an independent session to discuss, and I will be very happy to take another appointment with you and discuss more about it, and even if required, maybe take on the Orangi project as an example, and we
yeah.
we do a diagnostic
Actually,
analysis of the project.
Akhtar Hamid Khan did his first project in Kumila
Mm-hmm.
as appointed by the government,
Yes.
supported by at that time East Pakistan government.
Mhm.
He did his second project in Orangi, where he
Mm.
worked as from civil society organization, support organization. And his third brainchild was the Aga Khan Rural Support Programs work.
Yes.
in rural areas. So he worked in 3 different capacities with the government in Kumila, in
Yeah.
the informal settlements, quarter settlement in Karachi,
Yes.
and then a rural. And he used this diagnostic dialogue in all the 3 settings,
All the three.
and how the setting change the way you hold dialogue and the way you organize communities.
Yeah. But the framework
That
is
would,
similar. Yeah, framework is
yeah,
similar. So looking at three
yeah,
case studies and
yeah.
three geospatial setup and also stakeholder setup. So that will be
Yeah.
wonderful. And I'm really looking forward to having that session with you. For now, we will close the session of today on mapping stormwater management and especially looking at how the deploying of stormwater management programs happen in the global north and what can we learn and what are we already doing apart from learning for the global south. So first of all, thanks to Faisal, Shaheen for the wonderful presentation and also knitting in Fayyaz Bhai for this enlightening discussion. I can go on and on with you for another hour or
Thank you
two, to
so
be
much.
honest. But thanks
Thank you.
to all the participants here in Zoom as well as on YouTube. I see quite a few people there for being part of the session. We thank you for your support and encouragement. Today was our 301 session to really make the water conversations meaningful. For so long we have been going. We are already booked for until mid of December. So at least we know we are going for another 8 weeks. We shall continue the Wednesdays for Water sessions with Wednesdays to come. And next Wednesday is a very interesting session on 23rd of October, and where we talk about women journalists who are writing about water matters, what is their life, how do they get the stories, how do they get it across to the people. And we can really talk about some of the wonderful women journalists from across the country. We are having 3 speakers on that day. Next Friday Water, we also have a big event to celebrate our 300 plus session. And we are having Padma Shri Professor Dr. Pradeep Thallapil from IIT Madras, and he will talk about chemistry matters in water, and he's professor from chemistry. So I really look forward to having all these conversations, and also very, very humbled with all the support and encouragement from our speakers in the past and today, as well as all our participants. We have touched more than, I think, 10,000 lives through our sessions. So we are really, really grateful to all of you to make these conversations possible. And all our conversations are open access and available on YouTube, and many of them are getting written as essays for publication. Thanks all of you. Please take care of yourself and do keep checking our website for latest updates, www.w4w.in, and do take care of yourself once again. Goodbye and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.